The crystal champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the grand ballroom, punctuating my stepmother Victoria's dramatic entrance. "Stop this engagement immediately," she cried out, her voice carrying across the room of 200 stunned guests. "She's nothing but a gold digger." I'm Catherine Morgan, though in legal circles I'm better known as Kate Morgan, founding partner of Morgan & Chen International Law. Not that Victoria knew this part. To her, I was just her husband's troublesome daughter who'd never lived up to her standards of society success. My fiancé, James Chen, grabbed my hand as Victoria stalked toward us, her designer heels crunching over broken glass. "You have no idea what you're getting into," she announced to James. "She's after your family's shipping fortune, just like she tried to steal her father's money when I married him." The irony of being called a gold digger by the woman who'd married my father for his money wasn't lost on me. Victoria had swooped into our lives 5 years ago, when I was already a successful attorney but keeping my career achievements quiet to avoid family drama. "Mrs. Morgan," James said calmly, his hand steady in mine, "I think you're making a scene." "A scene?" Victoria laughed sharply. "I'm trying to save your family's legacy. Do you know she refused to sign a prenup when she married her first husband? Took him for everything in the divorce." Now that was interesting, considering I'd never been married before. Victoria was so caught up in her own narrative she was inventing stories. "Actually," I said, my voice carrying in the suddenly silent room, "I think it's time we discuss prenups. James, would you get the envelope from your jacket?" James smiled, understanding in his eyes as he pulled out a thick legal document. What Victoria didn't know was that James wasn't just my fiancé, he was also my law partner's brother, and we prepared for something like this. The thing about Victoria was that she'd never bothered to really know me. When she married my father, she'd taken one look at my simple lifestyle, the modest apartment, the used car, the lack of designer labels, and decided I was a failure. She never asked what I did for a living, never showed interest in my life beyond criticizing it. She didn't know that I built one of the most successful international law firms in Los Angeles, specializing in corporate law and, ironically, prenuptial agreements. That I lived simply by choice, investing my considerable income instead of flaunting it. That I'd met James not at a society function as she assumed, but in court, where I was representing his family's shipping company in a complex international dispute. "What's that?" Victoria demanded, eyeing the envelope suspiciously. "This," I said, opening the document, "is our prenuptial agreement. Would you like to read it?" Victoria snatched the papers, her expression smug. But as she read, her face began to pale. The prenup detailed my assets, the law firm, my real estate holdings, my investment portfolio. More importantly, it showed that my net worth was actually higher than James's. "This is impossible," she whispered. "You're just a what?" I asked quietly. "A gold digger? A failure? Or maybe a founding partner of Morgan & Chen International Law, one of the top law firms on the West Coast." The room had gone completely silent, every guest watching this drama unfold. My father stood near the back, his expression unreadable. He'd known about my success, of course, but had kept my secret at my request, understanding my desire to avoid Victoria's interference. "If you'd ever bothered to ask," I continued, "you'd know that I'm the one who helped restructure the Chen Shipping Corporation last year, saving them millions in international taxes. That's how James and I met." Victoria's hands were shaking as she flipped through the pages. "But, your apartment, your car. Our choices," James finished for me. "Kate taught me something important about wealth, that true success isn't about showing off. It's about building something meaningful." I saw the exact moment Victoria realized how badly she miscalculated. Her carefully constructed narrative of the poor stepdaughter trying to marry into money was crumbling around her designer shoes. "Now," I said, taking the prenup back from her trembling hands, "I believe you were just leaving." But Victoria had one more card to play. She turned to appeal to the crowd, her society mask firmly in place. "Surely you can all see through this charade. Papers can be faked, stories invented." Actually, a familiar voice cut in. "Everything about Ms. Morgan's success is very real." Bernard Chen, James's father and the head of Chen Shipping, stepped forward. "She's been our corporate counsel for years. In fact, she's the reason our company survived the trade crisis last year." Victoria's face crumpled as she realized she'd just publicly attacked someone with connections to one of the most powerful families in Los Angeles business circles. My father finally spoke up from the back of the room. "Victoria, I think it's time for us to go." But Victoria wasn't finished. As she turned to leave, she spat out one final accusation. "You've been lying to us all these years, pretending to be less than you are. What kind of person does that?" "The kind," I replied calmly, "who learned early on to watch for people who only value others for their money. You taught me that lesson, Victoria, though not in the way you intended." As the security team my firm had hired discreetly escorted Victoria out, I felt James squeeze my hand. We'd known something like this might happen. Victoria had been escalating her interference ever since our engagement was announced. But we planned for every contingency just like we did in our legal practice. What we hadn't planned for was what happened next. My father remained behind after Victoria left, approaching us slowly with an expression I hadn't seen since before my mother died. "Katie," he said softly, using my childhood nickname, "I think it's time we had a long talk about a lot of things." I looked at James, who nodded encouragingly. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's finally being free to live it openly. The band started playing again, but the night had shifted into something different than we planned. Sometimes that's how the best stories unfold, not according to the careful script, but in the messy, honest moments when masks fall away and truth emerges. The question was, what would happen next? After the engagement party drama, my father and I found ourselves in my office at Morgan & Chen, surrounded by the evidence of the success I'd kept quiet about for so long. Awards lined the walls, client testimonials sat framed on shelves, and the view of Los Angeles at night spread out before us through floor-to-ceiling windows. "I should have stood up to her sooner," he said, running his finger along a deal tombstone from a billion-dollar merger I'd orchestrated. "Should have told her the truth about your career." "It wasn't your truth to tell," I replied, pouring us both some scotch from my private collection. "I asked you to keep it quiet." "But why, Katie? Why hide your success for so long?" I considered the question, watching the amber liquid swirl in my glass. "At first, it was about proving myself without family connections. Then, after you married Victoria, it became a kind of test. I wanted to see who she really was, how she'd treat me when she thought I had nothing." "She failed that test spectacularly," my father said grimly. "She did. But so did you, in a way." The words came out before I could stop them, years of buried hurt rising to the surface. "You watched her belittle me, dismiss me, treat me like I was worthless, all while knowing the truth." His face crumpled with shame. I thought I was protecting your wishes by keeping your success private, but I was really just protecting myself from conflict." Before we could delve deeper, James arrived with news. Victoria had been busy since leaving the engagement party, calling our clients, trying to spread doubts about my firm's integrity. "She doesn't realize," James said, showing us the messages on his phone, "that she's actually committing defamation against one of the top litigation firms in the state." I smiled, feeling a familiar strategic calm settle over me. "Have our PR team monitor all communications, document everything, and contact Victoria's social clubs, the ones where she's always bragging about her society connections." "Already done," James confirmed. "The presidents of the Heritage Society and the Garden Club would like to speak with you of their legal representation." My father watched this exchange with growing understanding. "You're not just successful," he said slowly. "You're powerful. Actually powerful, not just rich." "Money is easy," I told him. "Real power comes from building something meaningful, something that helps others succeed." I gestured to a wall of photos, my pro bono cases, the charitable foundations I'd helped establish, the mentorship programs for young lawyers. The next few weeks were interesting. Victoria, discovering that her social circle was rapidly shrinking as people learned the truth, tried several approaches. First came anger, threatening to expose some imagined scandal about my past. Then bargaining, offering to reconcile if I helped her maintain her social position. Finally, she tried something unexpected: honesty. "I was jealous," she admitted during a mediation session James had arranged. "Not of your money. I didn't know about that. I was jealous of your relationship with your father, of your independence, of the way you didn't seem to need anyone's approval." "And now?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Now I realize I've lost everything I was afraid of losing." my social standing, my influence, my husband's trust. She looked smaller somehow, without her usual armor of designer clothes and society airs. I don't suppose there's any way to fix this. I thought about it carefully. In law, as in life, sometimes the best settlements come from unexpected places. Actually, I said there might be. Not to fix the past, but to build something new. Over the next several months, Victoria underwent a transformation. With my firm's guidance, she channeled her social networking skills into legitimate business development. She turned out to have a talent for connecting clients, for seeing opportunities where others saw only obstacles. You're not just giving her a second chance, James observed as we watched Victoria successfully charm a group of potential international clients. You're giving her something she never had, a chance to create her own success. My father, too, was changing. He started taking a real interest in my work, not just as a proud parent, but as someone trying to understand the world I'd built. He attended client meetings, asking intelligent questions, offering insights from his years of business experience. Last week, we had another party, this time to celebrate Morgan and Chen's expansion into international markets. Victoria was there, not as my antagonistic stepmother, but as our firm's new client relations director. She earned the position, proving that people can grow when given the right opportunities. I understand now, she told me quietly during a celebration, why you lived the way you did. It was never about the money or the status. It was about building something real. My father, overhearing this, joined us with James. She taught me the same lesson, he said. That true worth isn't in what you appear to be, but in what you actually build. James raised his glass. To building things that matter. And to family, I added, surprising myself. Both the kind we're born with and the kind we create. Today, Morgan and Chen continues to grow, but with a new division focused on helping women build their own businesses. Victoria runs it, bringing her social skills and newly discovered business acumen to help others find their path to success. My father has become one of our most valuable advisors, his years of experience now dedicated to something larger than himself. He and Victoria are working on their relationship, learning to base it on real partnership rather than social expectations. As for me, the simple apartment has been replaced by a home that reflects my success, but still prioritizes comfort over show. The used car gave way to something more practical for a senior partner, but not the flashy status symbol Victoria once thought I needed. Yesterday, Victoria brought me a client, a young woman starting her own company, afraid of being dismissed for her lack of connections. Remind you of anyone? Victoria asked with a knowing smile. I looked at the eager entrepreneur, remembering my own early days, and made a decision. Tell me, I said, how do you feel about starting small and building something meaningful? Sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving people wrong. It's helping them become right. The roses were dying. That's what broke my heart the most when I returned to my childhood home 3 months after Mom's funeral. Her prize-winning garden, once a riot of blooms and fragrance, was withering under the hot Texas sun. Just haven't had time for gardening, my stepdad Richard muttered when I mentioned it, not looking up from his phone. Besides, the house is going on the market next week. No point maintaining the landscaping. I froze, my hand still touching one of Mom's beloved Queen Elizabeth roses. You're selling the house. Of course. Now he did look up, his expression a mixture of condescension and false sympathy. Laura, your mother left everything to me. The house, the investments, everything. I need to liquidate assets to provide for my retirement and the kids' college funds. My stepbrothers, twins Kevin and Kyle, were 12. I'd never really connected with them, but Mom had tried her best to blend our families after marrying Richard 5 years ago. Now they barely acknowledged me, too absorbed in their video games to even attend Mom's funeral. But this was Mom's house, I protested. She inherited it from Grandma. The rose garden's been here for 40 years. And now it's mine, Richard cut in firmly. Your mother made her choices clear in her will. I'm sorry if that upsets you, but you need to accept reality and move on. Reality. The word echoed in my head as I drove back to my small apartment that evening. The reality was that nothing about the situation felt right. Mom had always told me the house would be mine someday. It's been in our family for 3 generations, she'd say as we tended the roses together. Someday you'll raise your own family here, add your own touches to the garden. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mom's last few months, how Richard had gradually restricted my visits, claiming she was too tired for company. How he handled all her medical care, all her legal affairs. How I hadn't even known she was updating her will. The next morning, I called in sick to work and started digging. Not in the garden, not yet, but through records. Mom had been meticulous about paperwork, a habit from her 30 years as a legal secretary. Surely she'd left some trace of her true intentions. My first stop was her old law firm, where she'd worked until her marriage to Richard. Her former boss, Mr. Harrison, was retired now but agreed to meet me for coffee. Something always felt off about that marriage, he said, stirring his latte thoughtfully. Your mother was one of the sharpest legal minds I knew. Not a lawyer, but she understood the law better than most attorneys. The way she changed after marrying Richard, it wasn't like her. Changed how? Became withdrawn, stopped maintaining her own financial accounts. Let him handle everything. He leaned forward. Laura, about 6 months before she died, your mother called me. Wanted to discuss estate planning. But when I arrived at your house, Richard was there. Said she wasn't feeling well, had to reschedule. We never did have that meeting. A chill ran down my spine despite the warm coffee. Do you think he was controlling her? Mr. Harrison chose his words carefully. I think your mother was a wealthy woman who suddenly signed everything over to a man she'd known less than 5 years, and I think that's worth investigating. The next few weeks became a crash course in forensic investigation. I took unpaid leave from my teaching job, using every spare moment to uncover my mother's paper trail. Bank statements showed large transfers to offshore accounts beginning shortly after her marriage. Property records revealed that Richard had gradually added his name to all her assets, not just the house, but her investment properties, her art collection, everything. But the smoking gun came from an unexpected source. Mom's best friend Susan, who now lived in a nursing home. She gave me this, Susan said, hands trembling as she pulled a sealed envelope from her bedside drawer. Made me promise not to open it or give it to anyone unless something happened to her. Said if she died suddenly, I should give it to you. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper with a series of numbers and what looked like a hand-drawn map of the rose garden. Your mother spent hours in that garden after Richard moved in, Susan recalled. Said it was the only place she could think clearly, the only place he didn't follow her. I studied the map, my heart racing. In the center, where Mom's prized heritage roses grew, was a small X with a note. Look deeper, my darling. The truth blooms in darkness. That night, I waited until 2 a.m. before driving to my childhood home. The spare key was still hidden under the loose brick by the back door. Richard apparently hadn't discovered all of Mom's secrets. The garden was eerie in the moonlight, the dying roses casting strange shadows. Following the map, I made my way to the heritage rose bed and started digging. 2 feet down, my shovel hit something solid. A waterproof safe, small but heavy. The numbers from Susan's paper worked on the combination lock. Inside, protected from moisture and time, was a treasure trove. Journals, documents, photos, and a USB drive. But what caught my eye first was a letter on top, dated just 3 months before Mom's death. My dearest Laura, it began. If you're reading this, then my suspicions were right. Richard isn't who he pretends to be, and I've gathered everything you need to prove it. I sat there in the dirt of my mother's garden, tears streaming down my face as I read her final message. When dawn broke, I had the beginning of a story so twisted, so calculated, that it would shake our entire family to its core. Mom's journals told a story of gradual manipulation and control. But they also revealed something else. Richard wasn't just an opportunistic second husband. He was a con man with a history of targeting wealthy widows. And my mother had discovered his true identity. But the USB drive, that was the key to everything. Mom might have been a legal secretary, but she knew how to build a case. And she'd built one that would destroy Richard completely. I was so absorbed in reading, I almost missed the sound of footsteps on the garden path. What are you doing here? I looked up to find Richard standing over me, his face twisted with rage as he spotted the open safe. Behind him, still in their pajamas, Kevin and Kyle stared wide-eyed at the mess I'd made of their father's perfect lawn. Finding the truth, I said, standing slowly, clutching Mom's evidence to my chest. Would you like to know what Mom discovered about your real name, Richard? Or should I call you David Thompson? Or maybe James Wilson? How many other names have you used? Richard's face went through a series of expressions. shock, rage, and finally, a calculated calm that was somehow worse than anger. "Boys," he said quietly, "go back inside." "But Dad," Kevin started. "Now." They scurried away, leaving us alone in the dying rose garden. Richard took a step toward me, but I held my ground. "Whatever you think you found," he said, "it won't hold up. Your mother was confused near the end. Paranoid. The medications. The medications you kept increasing?" I cut in, pulling out Mom's medical diary. The ones that made her so drowsy she could barely function. Funny how that started right after she visited her old doctor, the appointment where she found out she was actually in perfect health. His jaw tightened. "You're trespassing. I'm calling the police." "Go ahead." I held up the USB drive. "I'm sure they'd be very interested in what's on here. Mom was thorough, you know. She tracked down your other wives." That hit home. Richard went completely still. "What other wives?" "Margaret Thompson in Florida. Sandra Wilson in Arizona. Both wealthy widows who married a charming man who then drained their accounts and disappeared." I met his gaze steadily. "Mom found them both. Got their statements, found the pattern. How you change your name, move to a new state, find another wealthy widow to target." "Lies," he spat, but there was fear in his eyes now. "The police in Tampa would disagree. They've had an open case on David Thompson for years. Mom contacted them 3 months before she died. They've been building a case. All they needed was proof you were the same man." I pulled out my phone, pulled up the photo Mom had uncovered. "Like this picture from Margaret's wedding. You were younger, had different hair. But those eyes, they're unmistakable. And facial recognition software agrees." Richard lunged for my phone, but I was ready. I stepped back, my thumb hovering over the send button. "Everything's already backed up to the cloud. If anything happens to me, it all goes straight to the FBI's wire fraud division." "What do you want?" His voice was a growl. "First, you're going to call off the house sale. Then we're going to the bank, and you're going to return every penny you stole from Mom's accounts. After that," I smiled grimly, "we're taking a little trip to see Mom's lawyer." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Richard, knowing he was trapped, cooperated with a sullen resignation. We went to 3 different banks, where he transferred Mom's money back to accounts in my name. The house documents were next. He signed papers returning full ownership to the estate. But the real showdown came that afternoon at Mr. Harrison's office. I called ahead, and he'd assembled quite an audience. The estate lawyer, 2 police detectives, and on video conference, a very interested FBI agent from Tampa. "Mr. Thompson," the FBI agent said, using Richard's original name, "we've been looking for you for a long time." Richard's carefully maintained facade finally cracked. "Those women," he snarled, turning to me, "they were nothing. Your mother, she was different. I actually cared about her." "You drugged her." I cut in, my voice shaking with rage. "You isolated her. You watched her die while stealing everything she'd worked for. The only different thing about Mom was that she was smarter than you. She saw through you and made sure you pay for it." The evidence was overwhelming. Mom's journals detailed every suspicious change in her health after Richard began managing her medications. The USB drive contained financial records showing how he'd systematically drained her accounts, along with documentation linking him to his previous identities and victims. 3 counts of wire fraud, the FBI agent was saying. Identity theft, possible medical abuse, and that's just for starters. I watched as they led Richard away in handcuffs, his face a mask of cold fury. His final words to me were a threat. "Those boys are mine. You'll never see them again." But he was wrong about that too. Kevin and Kyle were waiting at the house when I returned, their young faces confused and frightened. They'd heard enough to know their father had done something terrible. But they didn't understand the full scope. "What's going to happen to us?" Kyle asked in a small voice. I sat them down in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Mom and I had spent countless hours baking and talking. "That depends on what you want. Your father, he's going to be away for a long time. But this was your home too. Mom would want you to stay if that's what you choose." "You let us stay." Kevin looked stunned. "Even after what Dad did." "You're innocent in all this," I said softly. "And Mom loved you both. She wrote about you in her journals, how she wished she had more time to be a better grandmother to you." That night, as the boys slept in their rooms upstairs, I sat in the garden with Mom's journals. There was one entry, dated just weeks before her death, that I kept coming back to. My darling Laura, I know you'll find this someday. Remember what I taught you about roses? How they need both sunshine and rain to grow strong. Life is like that too. The hardships we face can either break us or make us more resilient. I chose to fight back in my own way to protect you and even Richard's boys from his poison. Now it's your turn to bloom, my darling. Make this house a home again. Restore the garden. Create the family you deserve, not the one thrust upon you by deception. 6 months have passed since that night. Richard pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges. He'll be in prison for at least 15 years. His other victims have finally gotten closure, and Mom's estate has been fully restored to me. The boys are still with me. Their mother, Richard's first wife, died years ago, and they had no other family. It was challenging at first, becoming guardian to 2 preteens overnight, but we're finding our way. They're good kids, untainted by their father's cruelty. Most importantly, the garden is blooming again. Kevin and Kyle help me tend it now, learning the names and needs of each rose variety. Last week, our heritage roses won first prize at the county fair. Mom would have been so proud. Yesterday, while deadheading the Queen Elizabeths, Kyle found something else buried in the garden. A small ceramic jar containing Mom's favorite rose seeds and another note. For the next generation, plant them with love. We'll plant them this weekend, adding new life to this garden that has seen so much pain and healing. Mom always said roses can survive almost anything if their roots are strong enough. The same is true of families, real families, built on love and truth rather than lies and manipulation. The house is full of laughter again. The garden blooms with new purpose. And somewhere, I know Mom is watching, smiling as her final gift continues to grow and flourish in ways she might never have imagined. The rejection email from Next Tech Solutions still sat in my inbox 3 months after I'd received it. I hadn't deleted it, partly as motivation, partly as a reminder that even the most qualified candidates face rejection. Thank you for your interest in the Senior Cybersecurity Analyst position at Next Tech Solutions. While your academic credentials are impressive, we're looking for candidates with more practical industry experience. Your skills aren't what we're looking for at this time. I had spent weeks preparing for that interview. I'd studied Nextech's infrastructure, identified vulnerabilities in their public-facing systems, ethically, of course, and even developed a comprehensive security roadmap tailored to their specific needs. During the interview, the technical director, Marcus Webb, had seemed impressed by my analysis. The HR director, Caroline Winters, less so. Your dissertation on quantum-resistant cryptographic protocols is fascinating, Dr. Shah, she had said, reviewing my resume with a slight frown. But at Nextech, we need team players with proven track records in corporate environments, not academics. The rejection stung, especially considering I had turned down 2 other offers while waiting to hear back from them. Nextech was the industry leader in financial technology, and a position there would have been the perfect bridge from my academic career to the private sector. Instead, I had accepted a position with Sentinel Security, a smaller but well-respected cybersecurity firm that recognized the value of my research. Within 2 months, I had been promoted to lead their quantum security division, with a corner office, a substantial salary increase, and the freedom to build my team from scratch. Life had moved on, and I had nearly forgotten about Nextech until my phone rang on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in October. Dr. Arya Shah. The voice on the other end was tense, authoritative. Speaking. This is Lawrence Chen, CEO of Nextech Solutions. That got my attention. CEOs of billion-dollar companies don't typically make personal calls. What can I do for you, Mr. Chen? We need to meet. Today, if possible. We're facing a security situation that requires specialized expertise. I checked my calendar, already knowing it was packed with client meetings and team reviews. I'm afraid my schedule is quite full this week, perhaps next. Dr. Shah, he interrupted, we're facing a security crisis that could potentially bankrupt our company within days. Your former professor, Dr. Winters at MIT, says you're the only one who can help. Please. The desperation in his voice was palpable, but so was my memory of Caroline Winters' dismissive tone during my interview. May I ask the nature of this crisis? Not over the phone, but it involves quantum cryptographic vulnerabilities, exactly your specialty. We'll pay whatever consulting rate your firm charges. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the Seattle skyline from my corner office, the office I wouldn't have had if Nextech had hired me. My consulting rate is $15,000 per day, 3-day minimum, paid in advance. A pause. That won't be a problem. 2 hours later, I was being escorted through Nextech's gleaming headquarters in downtown Seattle. The security guards, the receptionists, even the employees rushing through the atrium all shared the same tense expression. Something had the entire company on edge. In the executive conference room, I found Lawrence Chen, Marcus Webb, and to my mild surprise, Caroline Winters. Chen looked like he hadn't slept in days. Webb seemed equally exhausted. Winters simply looked uncomfortable. Dr. Shah, thank you for coming on such short notice, Chen began, extending his hand. I understand our paths crossed during your interview process a few months ago. They did indeed, I replied, shaking his hand firmly. Caroline Winters cleared her throat. Dr. Shah, I want to. Perhaps we should focus on the current situation, I suggested, setting my laptop on the conference table. Mr. Chen indicated this was time-sensitive. Chen nodded gratefully. 3 days ago, we received this message on our secure executive server. He turned a monitor toward me. On the screen was a simple text message. We have quantum computed the private keys to your cryptocurrency holdings. In 5 days, we will empty all wallets unless 30 million USD is transferred to the following account. Technical proof of our capability is attached. Below was a string of highly technical data that made my blood run cold. It wasn't a bluff. Whoever had sent this had indeed managed to use quantum computing to break Nextech's encryption. We manage over $4.3 billion in client cryptocurrency assets, Chen explained. If these attackers have the capability they claim. They do, I interrupted, already analyzing the technical proof. This is legitimate quantum-assisted cryptanalysis. They've broken your elliptic curve encryption. Marcus Webb ran a hand through his hair. That's what our team concluded as well, but none of us specialize in post-quantum cryptography. We've consulted every expert we could find. But quantum-resistant cryptographic implementation isn't a theoretical concept anymore. I finished. It's an immediate necessity, and there aren't many experts who have moved beyond the theoretical. Exactly, Chen confirmed. Which is why Dr. Winters recommended you. She said your dissertation wasn't just theoretical. You'd actually built and tested quantum-resistant protocols. I opened my laptop. I'll need complete access to your systems, your current cryptographic implementation, and every communication you've had with the attackers. Of course, Webb said, sliding a security badge across the table. You'll have level 1 clearance, same as executive leadership. As Webb began briefing me on their systems, I noticed Caroline Winters hadn't spoken since her initial attempt. She sat at the far end of the table, watching me with an unreadable expression. The next 72 hours were a blur of code, coffee, and complex cryptographic implementation. I worked alongside Nextech's security team, who were skilled but clearly out of their depth with quantum threats. By the end of the first day, I had confirmed the full extent of the vulnerability. And it was worse than they thought. They don't just have access to your cryptocurrency wallets, I explained during the midnight briefing. They could potentially access every client account, every transaction record, every piece of financial data in your system. My God, Chen whispered. That would destroy us completely. The good news, I continued, is that I've developed a migration path to quantum-resistant algorithms. We can implement it before their deadline, but it will require taking your entire system offline for 12 hours. 12 hours? Webb looked horrified. We process over $50 million in transactions every hour. Our clients will still have their assets when this is over, I cut in. The alternative is losing everything. Chen didn't hesitate. Do it. At 2 a.m. on the second day, as I was coding the core migration protocols, Caroline Winters appeared with 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, she said, placing one beside my laptop. Thank you. She lingered, watching me work. Finally, she spoke. I made a mistake, Dr. Shah. 3 months ago. I continued typing, not looking up. We all make mistakes, Ms. Winters. I prioritized a certain type of experience over actual expertise. I dismissed your academic background as theoretical when it was exactly what we needed. She paused. I'm sorry. I stopped typing then, turning to face her. Apology accepted. Just like that? I shrugged. Holding grudges takes energy I don't have right now. Besides, your mistake led me to Sentinel, where I've been able to build something important. She nodded thoughtfully. Would you consider coming to work for us after this? Lawrence has authorized me to offer you any position you want, at whatever salary you name. I had to laugh at that. 3 months ago, I would have accepted your original offer without negotiation. Now, I'm afraid that ship has sailed. She nodded again, accepting this without argument. Then we're fortunate to have you as a consultant, at least. On the third day, at exactly 3 p.m., we initiated the system migration. The entire executive team, a board of directors, and a dozen anxious department heads crowded into the command center as NextSec's entire financial ecosystem went offline. Beginning quantum-resistant key generation, I announced, executing the command sequence. For 12 excruciating hours, we watched as the new cryptographic architecture deployed across thousands of servers. At hour 6, we received another message from the attackers. We see what you're attempting. It won't work. Will it? Chen asked quietly, standing behind my chair. It already is, I replied, pointing to the progress indicators. They're bluffing now. At 3 a.m., exactly 12 hours after we began, the system came back online, now protected by cryptographic protocols that would resist quantum computing attacks for the foreseeable future. Test transaction. Web called out. Successful, responded the security team. Client account verification. Integrity confirmed across all accounts. The room erupted in applause. I sat back in my chair, exhausted but satisfied. We had migrated $4.3 billion in assets to a quantum-secure environment in just 3 days. Something that would normally take months of planning and implementation. As the celebration continued around me, Lawrence Chen approached with a check in hand. $45,000 as agreed, he said, handing it to me, plus a $100,000 bonus for saving our company. I accepted the check with a nod. You might want to consider investing some of that $4.3 billion in a more robust security team. Actually, he replied, I was hoping to invest in you. Not as an employee. I understand you're happy at Sentinel, but perhaps a security partnership between our companies, your team providing specialized quantum security consulting to ours. It was a good offer, one that would benefit both companies. I'd be open to discussing that. As I packed up my equipment, Caroline Winters approached one last time. I've learned an expensive lesson about recognizing talent, she said, one I won't forget. The best recruiters know that true expertise doesn't always fit into neat boxes, I replied. Sometimes the theoretical becomes practical overnight, like quantum computing threats. Exactly like that. Outside, the rain had stopped and the early morning sun was breaking through the clouds over Seattle. My phone buzzed with a text from my team at Sentinel, checking on my progress. I typed a quick reply. Crisis averted. Potential new client secured. Be ready for partnership discussions when I return. As my cab pulled away from NextSec's headquarters, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. 3 months ago, standing in the same building, I had felt the sting of rejection. The implication that my skills weren't valuable enough, practical enough, corporate enough. Now I was leaving as the expert who had saved a billion-dollar company from disaster, commanding fees that reflected my true value, and potentially establishing a partnership that would benefit my team at Sentinel. Sometimes rejection isn't a closed door. It's the universe redirecting you to where you truly belong, preparing you for the moment when those who rejected you would need you most. And when that moment comes, it's not about revenge or gloating. It's about showing up with the expertise they failed to recognize, providing the solution only you can offer, and knowing your worth isn't determined by someone else's failure to see it. 3 days after saving NextSec, I received an email from Lawrence Chen. The subject line read, Partnership Proposal, NextSec and Sentinel Security. The opening paragraph made me smile. Dear Dr. Shah, your skills are exactly what we're looking for. They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes blood can drain you dry if you let it. I learned this lesson the hard way, watching my hard-earned money disappear into the black hole of family obligations, until the day I discovered just how deep the deception went. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm a loan officer at First Regional Bank. For the past 5 years, I've been sending my parents $2,000 every month to help out with expenses. At least that's what they told me it was for. Your brother's still getting back on his feet, Mom would say during our weekly calls. You know how hard it's been for him since the divorce. And with the economy the way it is. Ah yes, my brother Kevin. The perpetual victim of circumstance, always just one lucky break away from turning his life around. While I'd worked my way through college, earned my MBA, and built a career in banking, Kevin had bounced from job to job, living in our parents' basement and dreaming up get-rich-quick schemes. He's got real potential, Dad would insist. He just needs a little support until his cryptocurrency investments pay off. You're doing so well at the bank, surely you can help out your own family? And I did help, month after month, year after year, watching my savings dwindle while Kevin posted photos of his latest business meetings at expensive restaurants. But family helps family, right? That's what Mom and Dad always said. Until the day Kevin walked into my bank, wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, asking about a loan for a beach house. I wasn't supposed to be at the front desk that day. As a senior loan officer, I usually worked with commercial clients in my private office. But Linda was out sick, and we were short-staffed. So there I was when my brother strolled in, not even recognizing me behind my mask and plexiglass shield. I'd like to apply for a mortgage, he said, barely glancing up from his phone. Something in the $800,000 range. Ocean View preferred. I nearly dropped my pen. $800,000? My brother, who supposedly couldn't afford his own apartment? Of course, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I'll just need to see some documentation of your income and assets. Kevin finally looked up, his eyes widening as he recognized me. Sarah, what are you? I mean, I didn't know you worked this branch. For 3 years now, I said coolly. About those documents? He shifted uncomfortably. Look, maybe I should come back another time. No, please, I smiled, though it felt more like baring my teeth. I insist. As your sister, I want to make sure you get the best possible service. Trapped, Kevin reluctantly handed over his financial documents. What I saw made my blood boil. Bank statements showing regular deposits of $2,000, my money, going into an investment account. Tax returns listing significant income from various consulting jobs I'd never heard about, and property records showing he already owned a condo in the city that he purchased 2 years ago. 2 years. While I'd been living in a tiny apartment, sacrificing my own dreams of homeownership to help my struggling brother, he'd been building a real estate portfolio with my money. Interesting, I said, scanning the documents. So when Mom and Dad said you were living in their basement, they suggested it would be better if he thought I was still getting back on my feet. Kevin had the grace to look somewhat ashamed. You know how generous you are, sis. We didn't want you to stop helping out just because I was doing okay. My voice could have frozen lava. Mom and Dad were in on this. Kevin's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then paled slightly. Look, I should go. Maybe we can discuss this later, as family. I looked at his phone screen, catching a glimpse of a message from Mom. Did you get the loan? Don't let Sarah see the documents. Too late, Mom. Sure, I said, making copies of everything. Let's discuss it as family. Sunday dinner this week. Kevin practically ran from the bank. I sat there for a long time, looking at the evidence of years of deception spread across my desk. The condo purchase, the investment accounts, the regular transfers to offshore holdings. And through it all, my monthly $2,000 contributions, labeled in Kevin's spreadsheets as Sis's subsidy. That night, I dug deeper. Being a loan officer has its advantages. I had access to financial databases and property records that told a very interesting story. Kevin hadn't just been accepting my money, he'd been building a small empire with it. The condo downtown, a stake in a nightclub, and now he wanted a beach house. My phone rang, Mom's number. I let it go to voicemail. Sarah, honey, her voice was nervous. Kevin told us he ran into you at the bank today. I'm sure this all seemed shocking, but we can explain everything. Your father and I only wanted what was best for both our children. Call us back, please. I didn't call back. Instead, I spent the night documenting everything. Every transfer, every lie, every manipulation they used to keep the money flowing. 5 years of deception, laid out in cold, hard numbers. Sunday dinner was going to be very interesting indeed. But first, I had a stop to make. Because in reviewing Kevin's documents, I'd noticed something else, something that suggested my brother's financial success might not be entirely legal. And I had a meeting scheduled with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. My parents had always said family helps family. They were about to learn that sometimes helping family means holding them accountable. Part 2. The FBI agent looked exactly like you'd expect. Crisp suit, serious expression, and an air of having seen it all before. Agent Roberts sat across from me in a coffee shop 2 blocks from the bank, reviewing the documents I'd brought. "This is interesting," she said finally. "Your brother's investment patterns match several cases we've been tracking. Small-scale money laundering through real estate purchases, using legitimate income to mask darker money." Money laundering? I felt sick. Are you saying Kevin's involved with criminals? We believe he's been helping certain organizations clean their money through property investments. The condo, the nightclub, they're perfect vehicles for making dirty money look clean. She pulled out a photo showing Kevin meeting with a man I recognized from crime reports. Your brother's been on our radar for months, but we couldn't figure out where his seed money was coming from. From me? I whispered. I've been unknowingly funding criminal enterprises. Agent Roberts assured me I wasn't in any legal trouble, but suggested I might want to help them build their case. I agreed immediately. The idea that my hard-earned money had been used for criminal activities made my blood boil. Sunday dinner arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. I pulled up to my parents' house, the same house where I'd grown up, where Kevin supposedly still lived in the basement, exactly on time. Mom's pot roast smell wafted from the kitchen, a scent that used to mean comfort but now felt like part of the deception. "Sarah, honey," Mom rushed to hug me. "We've been so worried. You haven't returned our calls." "Been busy," I said shortly, shrugging off her embrace. "Where's Kevin?" "Running a little late." Dad called from his recliner. "Business meeting." "Right?" I smiled tightly. "Meeting with Mr. Salvatore again?" The color drained from my father's face. So he knew about Kevin's criminal connections too. Kevin arrived 20 minutes late, still wearing his expensive suit, barely meeting my eyes as he sat down at the dinner table. "Well," Mom said brightly, passing the potatoes. "Isn't this nice? The whole family together." "Let's talk about family," I interrupted. "Specifically, let's talk about what family means to all of you." "Sarah," Mom started, but I held up my hand. "For 5 years, I've sent you $2,000 every month. That's $120,000 total. Money I was told was helping my struggling brother get back on his feet." I pulled out a folder and started laying documents on the table. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that my struggling brother owns a $500,000 condo downtown. "Sarah, please," Kevin tried to interject. "And a stake in the Platinum Lounge nightclub. And numerous offshore accounts, all while supposedly living in Mom and Dad's basement." "We can explain," Dad started. "Oh, I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can explain why you let me sacrifice my own dreams of buying a house while Kevin built his real estate empire with my money. I'm sure you can explain why you all conspired to keep me in the dark." "We didn't want you to stop helping," Mom said tearfully. "You've always been the responsible one, the successful one." "The family ATM, you mean?" I laughed bitterly. "The reliable source of cash while you all lived it up." "It wasn't like that," Kevin protested. "I used your money to build something, to create opportunities, to launder money for criminals?" I asked quietly. The room went deadly silent. Kevin's face turned ashen. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. "Really? Should we call Mr. Salvatore and ask him? I'm sure the FBI would love to hear his side of the story." "The FBI?" Mom's voice rose to a shriek. "Kevin, what is she talking about?" "Nothing." Kevin stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. "This is ridiculous. Sarah's just jealous because I've been successful." "Successful at what?" I demanded. "Using my money to help criminals hide theirs? That fancy suit you're wearing, was it paid for with drug money? Human trafficking profits? How dare you?" Dad thundered, but his face showed fear rather than anger. "No, how dare you?" I shot back. "How dare you all sit here in your web of lies, pretending to be a loving family while stealing from me and enabling criminal activity?" "Please," Mom was crying now. "We can fix this. We'll pay you back." "It's too late for that." I said, standing up. The FBI has everything they need. They're probably watching this house right now. Kevin bolted for the door, but it burst open before he reached it. Agent Roberts led a team of FBI agents into the house, badges displayed. Kevin Mitchell, she announced, you're under arrest for money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. What followed was chaos. Kevin was handcuffed and led away, protesting his innocence. Mom collapsed in tears while Dad tried unsuccessfully to intervene. I stood in the middle of it all, watching my family's carefully constructed facade crumble. The investigation revealed the full scope of Kevin's crimes. He'd been using my family support money as legitimate cover for laundering millions in criminal proceeds through his various business ventures. Mom and Dad hadn't known of the criminal connections, but they'd happily helped him deceive me to keep the money flowing. Kevin took a plea deal, 15 years in federal prison. The nightclub and condo were seized as criminal assets. Mom and Dad faced their own legal troubles for their role in the financial fraud, eventually agreeing to pay restitution. A year later, I sat in my new house, purchased with the money I'd stopped sending to my family, reading a letter from Kevin in prison. I'm sorry, he wrote. I got caught up in the easy money, the lifestyle. I told myself I was just being smart, using your generosity to build something bigger. I never meant for it to go so far. I didn't reply. Some betrayals can't be answered with words. Mom and Dad still call sometimes, their voices heavy with guilt and regret. They're struggling now, their retirement savings depleted by legal fees and restitution payments. Sometimes they hint about needing help with bills. I don't respond to those hints. Last week, I was reviewing loan applications at work when a young woman came in, desperate for help with her parents' medical bills. She was working 2 jobs, sacrificing everything to support her family. Let me give you some advice, I told her, thinking of all I'd learned. Sometimes helping family means learning to say no. Sometimes love requires boundaries. She left with information about medical payment assistance programs and financial counseling services. I watched her go, remembering how it felt to believe that family obligation meant endless giving. They say blood is thicker than water, but they don't tell you that blood can be poisoned by lies and manipulation. I've learned that real family isn't about who can take the most from you. It's about mutual respect, honesty, and genuine support. I keep the FBI's case files in my home office, a reminder that sometimes the greatest act of love is holding people accountable for their actions. The documents tell a story of greed, betrayal, and consequences. But they also tell a story of freedom. Freedom from manipulation. Freedom from endless obligation. Freedom to build my own life without carrying the weight of others' deceptions. That's worth more than any family dinner could ever be. The security guard looked uncomfortable as he watched me pack my office. I'm sorry, Ms. Parker, he said, shifting from foot to foot. Miss Catherine insisted we supervise. I carefully placed my framed computer science degree into a cardboard box, fighting to keep my expression neutral. It's fine, Joe, just doing your job. Catherine, my sister, now apparently my ex-boss, had always had a flair for the dramatic. Of course she'd make this as humiliating as possible. My name is Samantha Parker, and at 34, I'd just been legally outmaneuvered from the tech company I'd built from scratch. Parker Tech had been my dream since college, a cybersecurity firm that had grown from my laptop in a garage to a 200-employee operation worth millions. But I'd made one crucial mistake, trusting my sister when she offered to handle the legal side of things. Don't forget to turn in your access card, Catherine's voice rang out from the doorway. She stood there in her perfectly tailored suit, every blonde hair in place, looking exactly like the corporate lawyer she'd become. We wouldn't want any unauthorized access to company systems. I bit back a laugh, if she only knew. Here, I said, unpinning my ID badge and holding it out. Anything else you need to supervise personally? Her smile was cold, just making sure everything transitioned smoothly. The board is very excited about the company's new direction. The board, handpicked by Catherine over the past year, gradually filled with her law school friends and business connections. I should have seen it coming, but I've been too busy actually running the company, developing our breakthrough encryption software. You won't be able to run it, I said quietly, so only she could hear. You don't understand the technology, the development process. That's what employees are for, she cut me off. Besides, I understand the most important thing, how to make money. which is more than I can say for you and your endless research projects. She was right about one thing. I prioritize development over profits, focusing on creating something revolutionary rather than just commercially viable. Our new quantum-resistant encryption protocol had eaten up millions in research funds, but it was almost ready. Almost perfect. Almost, but not quite. I picked up my box and walked toward the door. Catherine's voice stopped me. "Oh, and Sam, Dad wanted me to remind you that his offer still stands. There's always room for another lawyer in the family firm." That was the final twist of the knife. She knew how much I'd disappointed our father by choosing computer science over law school. Now she'd proven him right about which path led to real success. Or so she thought. Later that evening, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by screens showing lines of code. My phone buzzed. A message from David Chen, my lead developer. Team meeting set for tomorrow. Off-site location. Everyone who matters is in. Good. At least my actual team understood what was happening. I opened my laptop, not the corporate one I'd surrendered, but my personal machine, and began typing. Deep within Parker Tech's systems, buried in millions of lines of code, was something Catherine and her board would never find. Not until it was too late. The quantum encryption protocol hadn't been perfect when Catherine made her move. In fact, it had a very specific flaw. One that only I knew how to fix. A flaw that would become apparent at exactly the right moment. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus Zhang, our head of operations. Kate just announced new leadership team. All corporate lawyers, no tech background. She's killing R&D department next week. Exactly as I predicted. Catherine saw our research division as a money pit, not realizing it was the heart of what made Parker Tech valuable. She'd replace innovation with litigation, patents with lawsuits. I typed a brief response. Stick to the plan. Keep everything documented. The next morning, I met my core team at a small coffee shop across town. 20 people, developers, researchers, the ones who'd built Parker Tech's technology from the ground up, sat waiting for me. First, I began. "Thank you for coming. I know Catherine's been making threats about non-compete agreements. Those won't hold up, Lisa," our HR director, who'd quit the moment I was pushed out, interjected. "Not with the documentation we have about how the takeover happened." I nodded. "True, but that's not why we're here. David, show them." David opened his laptop, displaying a series of code repositories. Everything we've been working on for the past year. The quantum encryption protocol, the neural network security system, all of it has been properly backed up and documented, including all the development logs showing who actually created these systems. But the company owns the intellectual property, Tom, one of our senior developers, pointed out. Catherine made sure of that. I smiled. The company owns what they think is complete, working software. What they actually have is a version with a very specific vulnerability. One that only becomes apparent when you try to implement it at scale. Understanding dawned on their faces. Mark, our head of testing, let out a low whistle. "The beta version. You never uploaded the final fixes." "Because I knew this was coming," I confirmed. Catherine spent a year positioning herself to take control, but I spent that same year preparing for exactly this scenario. I pulled out a stack of papers and corporation documents for a new company. "Welcome to Quantum Security Solutions. We're small, we're independent, and we're about to revolutionize cybersecurity. Who's in?" Every hand in the room went up. Over the next few weeks, we worked in secret, setting up our new operation while watching Catherine systematically dismantle everything we built at Parker Tech. She brought in corporate lawyers to run development teams, focused on patent litigation instead of innovation. The press releases were glowing. Parker Tech announces new direction under dynamic leadership. The stock price even went up initially as Catherine promised increased profits through aggressive market positioning. Then came the day I've been waiting for. "Sam," David called from his workstation in our small new office. "They're trying to implement the encryption protocol for their first major client." I moved to watch over his shoulder as error messages began flooding Parker Tech's internal systems. The flaw I'd left in the code, elegant, subtle, but catastrophic at scale, was emerging exactly as designed. My phone lit up with a text from Lisa, who still had friends inside Parker Tech. Complete chaos. Systems rejecting all security certificates. Keys losing it. I could picture it. Catherine in her perfect suit, facing angry clients and board members, trying to explain why their revolutionary security system was collapsing. She blamed the development team she'd fired, the research she'd defunded, everyone but her stuff. But the best part was still to come. Catherine's call came exactly 3 hours after Parker Tech's systems began failing. I let it go to voicemail, listening as her carefully controlled voice cracked with panic. "Samantha, if you're behind this, I swear to God. The board is threatening to sue. Our biggest client is talking about criminal charges. Fix this, now." I waited another hour before responding, just long enough for the first news stories to break. Parker Tech's security system fails major implementation test. The company's stock was already dropping. When I finally called back, Catherine answered on the first ring. "What did you do?" she demanded. "Me? Nothing. I've been busy starting my new company. How's the encryption protocol working out?" "Don't play games," she snapped. "Every system is failing. The code, something's wrong with it." "Of course something's wrong with it," I said calmly. "It's not finished. The version you have is a beta build with a critical vulnerability. The finished version with the fix, that's proprietary technology belonging to Quantum Security Solutions." The silence on the other end was deafening. "You see, Catherine," I continued, "while you were busy with your legal maneuvers, I was documenting everything. Every development step, every test, every improvement, including the final fixes that make the system actually work. All properly dated, signed, and witnessed." "That's impossible," she whispered. "The company owns all the IP. The company owns what was in its systems when you took over. The critical updates that make it functional? Those were developed independently after you pushed me out. And before you try claiming otherwise, I have timestamps, blockchain verification, and witness statements from the entire development team." I could practically hear her mind racing, looking for a legal loophole. "The non-compete agreements are void due to the hostile takeover," I finished. "Your own actions invalidated them. You might want to consult a lawyer about that." "Oh wait, you are one." Later that day, Parker Tech's board called an emergency meeting. Catherine tried to blame the system failure on sabotage, on disgruntled employees, on anything but her own actions. But the evidence was clear. The version of the encryption protocol they owned simply didn't work without the updates. Updates that now belonged to my new company. Updates that their entire business model depended on. The next week was chaos. Parker Tech's stock plummeted as clients began pulling out. The board members Catherine had so carefully cultivated turned on her, realizing their legal backgrounds hadn't prepared them to handle a technical crisis. Then came the offer I'd been waiting for. "Miss Parker." The call came from James Martinez, Parker Tech's largest investor. "We need to talk about acquiring Quantum Security Solutions." I smiled. "I'm not interested in selling." "Name your price," he pressed. "Parker Tech needs those updates." "No," I said firmly. "What Parker Tech needs is new leadership. Someone who understands that technology companies should be run by people who understand technology." There was a long pause. "You want your company back. On my terms, complete control of technical development, a board that includes actual tech experts. And Catherine? She needs to go." The negotiations took 2 weeks. In the end, Parker Tech's board had no choice. Their company was worthless without the encryption protocol updates, and their shareholders were demanding action. The day I walked back into my old office, Catherine was waiting. She'd lost her polished look. Her hair was messy, her expensive suit wrinkled. "You planned this," she said. "All of it." "I learned from you," I replied. "You taught me that sometimes you have to think like a lawyer, document everything, prepare for the worst, protect your interests." I just applied those lessons to technology instead of legal proceedings. She laughed bitterly. "Dad was right about one thing. You would have made a hell of a lawyer." "Maybe, but I prefer building things to tearing them down." The reconstruction of Parker Tech took months. We merged it with Quantum Security Solutions, rebuilding the development team and implementing the complete encryption protocol properly this time. Catherine moved to California, taking a position with a corporate law firm. She never apologized, but she did send me a message when our quantum encryption system won a major industry award. "Congratulations, you proved me wrong about everything. Even lawyers can admit when they've lost." The framed computer science degree went back on my office wall, now joined by patents and awards that proved technical innovation could be more powerful than legal manipulation. Dad even called to say he was proud, though he still mentioned that the family law firm had an opening if I ever changed my mind. I kept the beta version of the encryption protocol, the one with the elegant flaw, framed in my office as a reminder. Sometimes the best defense isn't in the code you write, but in the code you don't write. And sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies, but about building something they can't touch. 1 year after the takeover attempt, I stood in Parker Tech's new research lab, watching my team work on our next breakthrough. The quantum encryption protocol had revolutionized cybersecurity just as I'd known it would. But more importantly, it had proven that technical excellence, not legal maneuvering, was the true path to success. Catherine's nameplate from her brief tenure as CEO sat in my desk drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that power based on manipulation is always vulnerable to truth and competence. The company she tried to steal had become something greater than either of us had imagined, precisely because her actions have forced me to protect and perfect our technology in ways I might never have considered otherwise. Sometimes I realize the people who try to destroy you end up making you stronger, not because of what they do, but because of how you choose to respond. That's the thing about technology. In the end, it doesn't care about legal documents or corporate maneuvers. It only cares about whether it works. And making things work, that's what I do best.